I think that in 2023, we will start questioning the GitOps. We will start questioning whether, with the expansion of GitOps, we see issues. We will start questioning whether that's the right model or we need to rethink it.
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 192, What Every DevOps Should Learn in 2023. Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darin and Viktor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darin reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Viktor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darin Pope and Viktor Farsic. The holidays are over. It's January 4th, 2023, and everybody is back to work. Are you back at work yet, Viktor? January 4th?
Probably did not go off work.
Exactly. Because there's always something to do.
Always something to do. But which in my case, it's a good thing, right? Kind of like sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I complain about the work, but I like my work. Whatever my work definition is, which would be a complicated one to define though, but yeah.
Like previous years, we're going to attempt and make some predictions, break out the crystal ball, and say what we should be learning in 2023. Let's start out with an easy one. If you still don't have remote work figured out yet, get that figured out.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Let's just put that one off. Listen to the past episode at 191, especially towards the end where we're talking a lot about remote work. Much like back in the 90s, having certifications sort of helped you get going in a job. Now, if you're wanting to be able to work for a company anywhere, remote work, and the mechanics of it, you need to understand. So that is what you should learn if you still haven't figured it out in the past 2 years.
Especially if you're, I would say, and this is going to sound strange, especially if you don't live in US. Because the US and a couple of other regions in the world are kind of epicenters. That's where majority of innovation is happening, funding and what's not, right? If you don't want to be tied with wherever you live, kind of like, I have those 5 companies, remote.
There's books written about that. We've talked about it a lot, but we wanted to at least get it on one more time. Learn that. Now, with that out of the way, what else should people learn this year if they haven't started learning it yet?
I'm not sure whether it falls into learning, but if you would rephrase the question and say, what is going to be in? What's going to be the wave, right?
Let's do that. Let's do some, all is fair in love and war in 2023. So what's the wave? What do you need to learn? Everything's on the table.
Yeah. So, of course, like nobody else, I don't really follow everything, so I don't know. If you ask me machine learning, what's going to be the wave, I don't know. That's not my area. But within my area, I would place my bets on platform engineering. I think that that's becoming massive. Massive as in every company has or is forming or will be forming platform engineering team and building platforms for the rest of the company. Now, to be honest, we've been doing that for 30 years. But now there is an additional focus in that. I see, like if I go to events like KubeCon and what's not, the number of newly created companies that are really providing help and tools in that area is growing exponentially.
So are you saying that platform engineering is the new DevOps?
Yeah. I would say that, so in theory, one does not depend on the other. But if we really want to enable people to be DevOps-ish, to kind of manage full life cycle, to be in control of their applications from beginning to the end and all the good stuff about DevOps, then yes, having a platform that will facilitate that, instead of saying, here's a credit card, go AWS, is critical. So I would say that platform engineering enables or helps drastically DevOps.
Does it hide DevOps? Is it just another layer of abstraction on top of DevOps?
No, it's, I mean, it is another layer of abstraction, but I don't think it's on top of DevOps because, again, depends how you define DevOps. I still see DevOps as developers and operators working together in a team trying to move an application or a group of applications from idea to production. If that's what DevOps is, then you need additional layer to simplify that process because you cannot have every single team reinventing the wheel and figuring everything out and so on and so forth. You need some other team or group of people figuring out answers to hard questions for everybody else, right? And we had that always, right? Kind of like sysadmins and operators, they were figuring out how to, run system effectively, what's or not, right? But now we are talking about codifying that experience, right, into platforms. On top of that, what I'm going to say will sound ridiculous, but I feel that companies are finally figuring out that they need to treat those people in those other teams like customers and ask them, what do you need? I've seen so many platforms in the past. There wasn't a term platform team, I think. At least wasn't that common. Now it is. But when a team of people lock themselves in a basement and 2 years later come up with something that resembles a platform and go to the CTO and say, you should mandate that everybody must use this, and the CTO does that. And then everybody hates them because that platform is not doing even close to what it's supposed to be doing and not helping anybody and so on and so forth, right? But I feel that that's changing now. We are understanding better. We have better tools. People are speaking more. So anyways, platform engineering, at least as a term, I stake my career that we will be hearing in 2023 the words platform engineering and internal developer platform much more than we were hearing those terms in the past. And we can now discuss, if you want, Darin, how we're going to measure the success of that, but I guarantee that that's going to happen.
Let's not get into measuring that yet. But I will agree with you, the term platform engineering and the weirdly named acronym of IDP. Because anytime you see IDP, it's a lower I and then upper D and upper P. Why are we doing that? I don't understand. But that's what you see too, right?
I don't know anymore, to be honest. I think that, it's when something becomes so common that your brain is not even registering.
I think another thing that we're going to be running into, it started in 2022. It's actually started before then, but I think it's going to really come to the forefront now, is the software supply chain. And really, hint, hint to all the platform engineering teams, this should be part of your platform, by the way. This shouldn't be something else that somebody else has to bring into your platform. But in case you're not going down the platform engineering route in your shop, you definitely should be going down your supply chain. Now, what do I mean by that? If you are allowing in your organization all the developers just to pull directly from Maven Central or from NPM, I can't remember what their registry is called, or from the PyPy, and you're just getting stuff from the outside world and that's going into your software, that needs to change. 3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I agree on that one. Yeah, the supply chain is going to be massive in 2023. I concur.
And not just supply chain, but the true security of the supply chain. Because going through my example I just said, you're not allowing people to pull things from the outside world and package it. But you're thinking, okay, great. That means I'm going to run everything through my own internal registries, Artifactory, Nexus, your own homebrew, whatever, it doesn't matter. But even that's not going to be enough. Because how do you know what you proxied through and put there and even scanned is still okay? There's going to be layers of this that show up that we haven't even started to understand yet.
That probably means that among many other things, we will be signing everything, right? And validating those signatures across the whole process.
Yep. And I think that's number 3, is everything has to be signed. Everything. So whatever you're using has to be signed. Whatever you're packaging has to be signed. And then this leads into really the software bill of materials, which that's what I would consider probably the higher level of this. Everything has to be signed, which means when you're actually running the software, you have to verify that the signatures are what they say they are, which impacts, again, potentially the platform engineering team. Because does platform engineering only focus on the internal developer platform, or does platform engineering also cover the runtime environments?
Yeah, I think that what platform engineering covers really will differ from company to company. I see it as a service, right? You can be expert in X, whatever. Let's say security to change, right? How can you provide security to other people as a service? To me, platform engineering is really a umbrella to say, if you're not directly working on a life cycle of an end user application, you're providing services to others. So internally, right? And then platform is really a collection of those services. And that will differ greatly. And supply chain will be there, of course, right? Kind of like, how can we design that in a way that a human being who did not spend 2 years studying it can use it independently of anybody else? Some things are easy. Like, for example, you don't need much help for signing something. That's very straightforward today. But you do need help validating whether something is signed on every single step in the process, right?
Yeah, because that's only going to scale so far. And whatever those automations are at whatever point in the pipe, those will have to be automated, right? That can't be a human thing, at least not in real time. Are we going to see anything new in the Kubernetes ecosystem? What about eBPF?
eBPF, yeah, eBPF is definitely, it's a thing. I'm not sure how much we will be talking about it. Maybe initially, maybe for a while, yes, but I think that many of the things will be moving to eBPF. So here's a prediction. The number of tools doing something in Kubernetes as a sidecar container will be dropping in favor of eBPF. That's kind of like how you can see it. And that can be in many different areas, right? But sidecar as a concept in Kubernetes will be, a few years from now, we will be saying 2023 is when we collectively made the decision that sidecars are not a good use case, not a good choice for majority of use cases as a result of going to eBPF.
Is there anything else around Kubernetes that's going to be any earth-shattering things? Do we dare roll the dice on storage? Anything changing massively in storage?
I'm not sure about storage. In any case, I think that must become boring. I don't see big guys like, Amazon and the like drastically improving storage or dropping prices and all of those things. I think that's coming from others, but I'm not sure how much the industry will pick that up in terms like, hey, I'm not going to use whatever AWS is offering. I'm going to use some third-party storage solution. I think it's coming. I'm just not sure 2023. What I can say is that I think that 2023 will be probably a year when something similar to cloud services is going to happen, like what happened to internet. Long time ago, when at the first years of internet, almost all the content was coming from like handful of providers, Yahoos of the world. And then over time, internet became much wider in terms that many more players entered the game, and consumers consumed content from much wider range of content sources. I think that the same thing is happening already, and it will be increased drastically in 2023. I think that the big three, Amazon or AWS, Azure, and Google, are going to continue being the biggest kids in town, but their overall market share will drop, meaning that more and more services are coming, and more importantly than that, because that was happening in the past, companies are going to be adopting those services. Meaning, I do not expect, just as in the past, at one moment, general consensus was, I do not expect everything that I have in my data center to come from IBM. I think that that's what's happening with cloud services now. Not everything has to come from X, whatever X is, AWS, Azure, Google.
So what you're saying is we're going to see the Herokus, the Flies, those kinds of things grow because they are, quote unquote, stealing business from the big three.
Yeah, not necessarily stealing, because the business at the same time is cloud in general is business is increasing so rapidly that. But so that's not necessarily stealing. But yes, I think that companies are more and more open to the idea that, hey, I will use service of this provider for this, service of that provider for that. That was happening in the past, just to be clear. A lot of people use Datadog, right? But in the past, I think that was limited to some specific services. Now we will see that increasing massively, right? And that's going back to your question about storage. I'm not necessarily 100% sure that storage is one of those massive increases. It could be. But yes, people are going to start using services from wider range of providers. I'm sure of that.
You mentioned Datadog there. Do you see anything changing majorly in the metrics area this year?
Not necessarily on tooling. So I see a lot of startups, but not yet at a level of we're going to replace big guys that are in the game for years now. A lot of interesting stuff there, but they're still on a relatively small scale. What did change and what will continue changing, I think, is the acceptance that all those, like including Datadog, have to comply to OpenTelemetry. That's the step that is ongoing, and I think that will enable competition entering harder into the ring. But everybody accepting, and everybody more or less accepted already, that inevitability of having OpenTelemetry as the interface, which is bad news. Bad news for big players, right? Because that means that I can actually switch from one to another relatively easily. Not everybody rewrote everything to use OpenTelemetry and all that stuff, right? But that means that those types of services need to compete with each other on quality and price and what's not, without really having much leverage in how to retain people who would otherwise leave, right?
So it's interesting that you bring up OpenTelemetry. Can you think of any other opens that we might see this year?
We had failed attempts. I could say that what OpenTelemetry tries for telemetry was what Open Application Model tried for applications. I think that KubeValley is fantastic and successful, but I don't see that becoming a standard like OpenTelemetry is. I don't see anybody else adopting it, or maybe a few only. So I'm not sure that there are definitely, if you go to especially Kubernetes 6, you will see a lot of projects similar to OpenTelemetry, but none of them at the level of acceptance as OpenTelemetry, at least that I know of.
I mean, OpenTelemetry to me feels very much like the point at which Kubernetes was accepted as a standard.
Yeah. There is that tipping point that you cannot convince people to rewrite their software to use that new open standard. That's extremely hard to do, right? Because who wants to be the first one to invest in rewriting things for the sake of adopting standard and what's not, right? But once you reach that number, whatever the number is, it will depend on the industry segment, right? But let's say 5 that adopt it, then the rest must do it. Then you're fine, right? Then you're finished. And OpenTelemetry is in that space because now it's not that people look at this as OpenTelemetry as investment that they need to make in their own software, but something that is hurting your business if you don't have it. Because people are asking now, hey, I would like to have your services. Is this OpenTelemetry? No. Oh, okay. No, then I'm not sure, right? It passed the tipping point, and that's absolutely amazing.
So up to this point, we're predicting platform engineering, at least as a term, is going to be everywhere. Supply chain, and specifically secure supply chain, I'm going to go out on a limb here. It's going to become table stakes by the end of the year. You've got the U.S. government putting things in place to where secure supply chain is part of that. I imagine other governments around the world are going to do the same. Along with that, everything's going to be signed. Everything. And with signing, we also have to validate that. Well, we don't have to, but we should be.
I mean, then you waste time signing.
Signing, right. That's always the argument. It's like, why am I signing it? Nobody's actually validating it. So that's where, especially in the Kubernetes world, that's where Kyverno and OPA come into play, depending on which way you want to go down, right? Is that going to be changing? Do you see that changing a lot, that space?
No, I'm not seeing anything really threatening that space, at least when Kubernetes is concerned. Yeah, Kyverno and OPA, those are the dominant market players, and I think that Kyverno is going to continue slowly eating the market. But yeah, going back to verifying signing, right? I think that will be the critical role there. Will and already in partially are having registries or repositories, right? In terms like, hey, you can push something here, but you cannot pull it if it's not verified, because that's that inception point that you can, yes, of course, I can put it in many different places validating something, but let's say it's a container image, just to say something, but equally applies to binaries, to manifest, to whatever. The easiest way to say it, am I safe? This validated that this is Viktor stuff, is to say, is to happen there, right? Kind of, I cannot pull it. I cannot use it, period.
It's not visible unless it has checked out internally within the registry itself.
Yeah. Now, whether that's checked by registry, just to clarify now, whether that is checked by registry or it is checked by some other process, that will depend, right? What I'm saying is that registry needs to have the information, no matter who created that information, that yes, this is Darin's, it's been signed by Darin, and additional things like it's been validated that it doesn't have high vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. So I think not necessarily as repositories, as engines that will always run those things, but they will have those checks. Do I have the information that this is valid? Yes or no? No, you cannot pull it, period.
So that means the tooling like Maven, Gradle, NPM, fill in the blank, the rest of them, are going to need that kind of information built in to whatever the lifecycle management is, right?
So I think that rather they would have to be capable to provide that information to registry. Like, for example, when you sign something, let's say that you're signing something with Maven, right? You need to push that signature to registry. The registry allows you to pull that something later, right? Because it says, oh, okay, I have a signature. You're allowed to pull it.
Well, and that's the model that Cosign is doing today.
Yeah, Cosign is pushing signature to a registry, right? And now Harbor, for example, has a mechanism in itself where you can say images can be pulled only if they're signed. Harbor is not doing the signing part, right?
Right. But they're enforcing
Yes.
the pull. So basically what you're saying is, I'm going to make up a phrasing here. Basically, we're going to see a Kyverno-like thing show up for the registries.
Yes.
And repository things. There's going to be, whether it's implemented by the vendor itself or by the project, we're going to see that pop up.
Some kind of rules engine. And I think that it will be increasing, right? It could be signing. It could be security scanning. It could be many, many other things, right? Because you generate information in many, many different places, right? Throughout in different tools. And that's almost unavoidable, right? But you do not want to put validations in 50 different points if you can get away with one or two.
So we've got platform engineering, secure supply chain, which bleeds into signing. We've talked about eBPF will start replacing sidecars. And then finally, or not finally, OpenTelemetry becomes the true standard. Is that enough crystal balling for 2023?
I don't know, man.
Where do you think we'll end up on this? 50-50?
I mean, it's relatively safe predictions, kind of no flying cars type of predictions.
Okay, so let's make at least one flying car prediction.
Flying car prediction.
What do you think?
I don't know.
What would be a flying car prediction for this year? Is it something that we just don't know about yet? That's still stealth?
I mean, we will certainly see increase in AI. And I'm now saying not AI for general consumption, but AI within software development tooling. I just cannot predict whether we will see more marketing and wrapping paperware or
versus substance.
That I cannot predict, to be honest.
Okay. Let's see if I can go a different angle. Recently, GitHub announced that Codespaces now gives you 60 hours free, and Gitpod gives you 50 hours free. Is this the year of the remote development environment?
I would certainly like it to be, but I'm not sure. I'm skeptical. Adoption is not going as fast as I would have predicted last year. Now, for things like Copilot from GitHub, I think that's going to be AI, like for helping coding, yes. But I see a lot of rejection of leaving laptops. So I'm not sure.
We need at least one "you've got to be kidding me" type. Can you roll your D20 right now and just say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to see in 2023. It can be wild. Based in reality, but wild.
Nothing comes to my mind, man. I'm blank.
Istio becomes standard?
Yeah, that's not wild. That's not wild.
Well, it's controversial, but it's not wild.
Yeah, I don't think that Istio will become standard. I think that it will be at best flat.
How about this? We're going to see the Kubernetes control plane be used for things besides container management. This will be the year of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid that because...
well, no, you're biased on that.
Right, but that's right. Where I'm...
But are we going to see it beyond your use case that you're doing today in your day job? Are we going to start seeing that really expand?
So, yes, we're going to see that almost certainly. And all the signs are there. So what we're going to see is, one way or another, all vendors providing Kubernetes controllers for their stuff. That I can stake anything in. No matter the technology, some are going to roll their own, some are going to contribute to third parties and so on and so forth. But yes, AWS, Azure, Alibaba, Google, Datadog, GitHub, all of those are going to be providing Kubernetes controllers and custom resource definitions to manage their stuff. I guarantee that.
And if you don't understand what we're saying here, what we're saying is basically the only thing that you'll need from a Kubernetes perspective is a control plane. You won't need workers.
Yeah, you might not need workers, at least not in that cluster. So here's another one, or maybe the same one, but slightly differently said. We're going to see Kubernetes clusters splitting into two types of clusters physically. One type of cluster that is meant to run your workloads, containers running in that cluster. The other one being cluster or clusters that are serving only the purpose of pass-through management control plane, right? I'm not running containers. I'm a cluster, if you can call it cluster, that just controls your stuff. Other clusters, EC2 instances, Datadogs, GitHub repositories, everything. Yes, that's a wild prediction.
That's a wild prediction. And what you're saying there is this is the year that GitOps becomes the standard. If we're going to be putting a really big thing out there,
it becomes the standard for beyond containers. Yes,
I think that will be the one that we'll be completely wrong on at the end of 2023.
So here's the thing. At the same time, I think that in 2023, we will start questioning the GitOps. We will start questioning whether, with the expansion of GitOps, we see issues. We will start questioning whether that's the right model or we need to rethink it. So, increased number of doubts and questions about GitOps, but not in terms like what we had before. I shouldn't be using GitOps because whatever I had before is better, but we will have a plan for after GitOps by the end of this year.
So whatever the successor is to GitOps will
emerge.
Will emerge by the end of 2023. Yes. Okay.
I have no clue what that is, just to clarify.
Because I think until we have these other pieces in place that we don't see yet, whatever those pieces are, much like OpenTelemetry made zero sense until it was there.
Exactly.
Now that it's there, then you see the rest of the story. We don't see the rest of the story yet for what's going to be after GitOps. But we can guarantee this one thing. There will be something after GitOps.
Oh, yeah.
So that's our prediction episode for 2023. What do you think? You can go over in the Slack workspace, look us up in the podcast channel, and leave your comments there. We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.